Hugh Merriman.
It's a great pleasure to speak in the last half hour of the 64 hours of the committee stage of the EU Withdrawal Bill. I'm absolutely delighted to speak and to rise in support of Amendment 400. I congratulate my honourable friends for putting this forward. It seems to me that we now have a position akin to Article 50, where we leave no later than 2 years from trigger, but we know when that date will be, but we retain the flexibility should that be required. And I think it shows a great compromise across the House and demonstrates to the House and to the public at large that we are capable of finding a way through where we have some discord previously. And it is a great pleasure to speak during this committee stage. I listen intently at the points made about Amendment 7 and requiring the government to honour that commitment, and the government have done so. I would therefore ask all of those honourable members that the rest of the bill that has not been amended should also be honoured in that basis as well. So I very much hope that's a reciprocal commitment that those opposite have referenced. But, Mrs Lang, the key part, and I've sat through 8 hours of this committee stage this afternoon, and the key part that struck me is the lack of optimism and the lack of ambition that I'm hearing. And actually, I think in no way reflects the country at large. This today being the day when it's been announced the UK ranks first, for the very first time, in the Forbes annual survey of the best countries for business. All I can say is, if Forbes had been tuning into this debate, they may well have been wondering if they got the right country. Because the reality is, Mrs Lang, the world is changing. We, of course, must look for our trade with our European partners, and the Prime Minister set out quite clearly that we want to continue to trade. We want to continue to purchase the goods that we've always purchased and will continue to do so from mainland Europe. But take Africa, for example. Germany and Spain have declining populations. Africa has 1.2 billion people at present. By 2050, that will be doubled to 2.4 billion. There are trade opportunities for us to take advantage of. And to remain inside the customs union, as new clause 13 would actually have us, would not allow us to take advantage of those opportunities. And it's also, I won't give way because of time, but it's also missing the point that we trade as part of the EU under WTO rules with a number of countries, with the US, with China, with Hong Kong, with Australia, with Russia, with Saudi Arabia. So to say that we can't continue to trade with those countries on WTO rules when we already are as part of the European Union, again, is missing the point. And then I come to the real point that I wish to encapsulate. During the referendum campaign, unlike, I think, many members in this place, I didn't take a view. I chaired debates, I didn't show any view. So I listened to the arguments going on from both ways. And I dare say those honourable members and right honourable members who took a view were perhaps not listening to both views because they were so passionate about their own. I cannot remember listening to any argument from any individual who wanted to leave the European Union saying, I fancy a bit of what Norway have got. I would like to leave the European Union and remain within the single market. And it's been mentioned the customs union, but of course Norway isn't part of the customs union. Because it's quite clear to most members of the public, it's certainly made clear by both sides of the argument, that the EU is effectively the brand. The substance of the EU is the single market, is the customs union. So if more people voted to leave the European Union than remain, which we know indeed was the case, then there's a very fair chance that those people, A, knew what they were leaving for, and they certainly didn't want to leave and then return through the back door, as many honourable members have. And this, Mrs Lang, is the key part for me. I really believe, and I put this respectfully, that there are many in this chamber seeking to re-engineer the arguments and seeking to put the arguments on their side because they don't want to leave, even though most of them triggered or voted to trigger for Article 50, so they have chosen to leave. They actually now want to redesign the terms, seeking to have the public on their side, asking, as the honourable member for Bath mentioned, that the public are asked what they think, as if we have a spreadsheet big enough for that. The reality is the public have voted as a majority to leave. They now look to the executive to lead those negotiations, and they look for Parliament to support those negotiations, scrutinise as it's doing, but ultimately get on with the job and be optimistic, ambitious about the future of this country, and not sit on our hands.